Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're so glad that you have decided to join us today, and we are so very excited to introduce Jean Pendziwols. You may remember Jean from a couple of years ago when she made the trek up the 614 to visit us in person. And we are very glad to have her back with us today. Jean is an award-winning Canadian author born and raised in Northwestern Ontario, and she draws on the culture, history, and geography of the region for inspiration for her stories. And after our session, if you get inspired, we do have many of her books in our library, including Once Upon a Northern Light, which she read to one of the classes that she visited with when she was here. Um, Her Dragon series, which has some safety tips for kids, and Me and You and the Red Canoe, which was her previous newest book. We're going to learn about a newer one today, as well as an adult book as well that she wrote called Lightkeeper's Daughter. And so we are so pleased that she is able to join us today and talk about her newest book, which is I Found Hope in a Cherry Tree. And throughout our session, if you have any questions, we do have our chat open, so you can go ahead and post some questions in there. We're also trying to watch Facebook as well. So if you're multitasking and want to send us a message on Facebook, we will certainly pass those questions along to Jean in a few minutes. But without any further ado, we want to welcome Jean to come and talk to us. So welcome, Jean.
Thank you so much. It's great to be visiting Manitouwadge again, even if it's virtually this time. So I'm so happy to be spending this time with you and celebrating I Read Canadian Day. So this day is a very new event, and it was initiated by Canadian writers who write for young people. And the idea is that on I Read Canadian Day, you spend 15 minutes reading a book by a Canadian author. And one of the things that I find so wonderful about Canadian children's books is that there's such diversity from coast to coast to coast. We have so many authors and so many illustrators creating incredible books for you to read on I Read Canadian Day. So I grew up in Northwestern Ontario. I was born in Thunder Bay, and I grew up in Thunder Bay. And I spent a lot of my life sailing out on Lake Superior. So as a child, my family always had a sailboat, and we would spend our weekends and summer vacations out on our sailboat on Lake Superior. So I spent a lot of time as a child reading. We would take books with us because when you're on a boat, you can't go a lot of places, and there weren't a lot of other people to play with. So my sisters and I spent a lot of time reading. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to become a writer, is because I fell in love with books and with stories and just disappearing into different worlds and getting to know different characters on the pages of a book. So I really had a passion for reading. But also what I found out was that there weren't a lot of books that were written about what I call my own backyard. I didn't find a lot of books other than Paddle to the Sea, for example, that was set on Lake Superior. And I didn't read a lot of books where the characters were in Northwestern Ontario, so going to their camps or their cottages or canoeing in Quetico Park. So when I started writing books, I knew that I wanted to bring a little bit of who I was in this place that's so special and so inspiring for me. I wanted to bring that to other readers. So as a writer, I just appreciate that readers get to share this incredible Northwestern Ontario part of the world that means so much to me, and part of Canada. So the latest book that I have to share with you today is I Found Hope in a Cherry Tree. So I want to tell you a little bit about why I was inspired to write this story. So a few years ago, and it takes some time for an idea that comes into an author's head to actually come out and be made into a book. A few years ago, back in 2017, there were some things that were happening in the world that I found a little bit upsetting. There was some violent situations that happened in the United States, which confused me and made me feel a little bit scary. I was becoming more and more aware of our climate crisis. There were some racially motivated crimes that were happening in Canada and the United States and around the world. And I was feeling a little bit discouraged, actually. And so I started to read more about hope and what hope was. And what I realized and what I learned when I was reading more and spending more time thinking about it was that hope was not just a state of mind. It wasn't just saying everything is going to be fine, everything's going to be okay, which is a positive attitude, but it kind of excused me from doing anything. What I realized was that hope wasn't just being optimistic and a thought that everything's going to be fine. Hope actually is an action. It's a choice to move forward in the face of the unknown and the unknowable. So I thought, because I'm often inspired by the natural environment, how can I change that and put it into something that readers could appreciate and understand the concept? So I decided to write this poem story called I Found Hope in a Cherry Tree. And then when I sent it to my publisher, they loved the story, and they had Nathalie Dion, who lives in Montreal and Quebec, do the illustrations. So I'm going to share my screen with you right now and read you the story, and then we can talk a little bit more about hope. I can answer some of your questions, and yeah, we'll continue the conversation. So I Found Hope in a Cherry Tree, published by Groundwood Books and illustrated by Nathalie Dion. I can see the sun in my shadow, arms and legs stretched in early morning, as large and long as a giant's. So I have a little friend that usually helps me to read this story. And this little cat appears in the books. I want you to watch carefully for him. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you to type into the chat what you think the cat's name is. We play, my shadow and I, taking turns chasing, first one and then the other. Sometimes my shadow shrinks to a small, mischievous monkey, and sometimes it disappears. I've learned it never stays away for long. Sometimes a few minutes, sometimes a few hours, sometimes a few days. But it always comes back. I can hear the wind tell stories, whispering to the trees, making them laugh and sigh. The stories dance too, chasing across the lake until they climb ashore to hush and hiss in the sand. When the stories howl like wolves in winter and creep beneath the covers to nibble my toes, I remember that the best way to tame wolves is to tell them a story. So I do. I can taste clouds in snowflakes that float gently, fat and soft like a sweet dream, to melt on my tongue. I collect them on my mittens, each one perfect and beautiful and special. Sometimes the snowflakes toss and tumble and arrive icy and sharp to prickle my cheeks and freeze my nose. But still, they taste like clouds. I found hope in a cherry tree that places tiny buds on shivering leaf-bare branches in autumn, knowing that shadows can disappear and stories can howl like wolves and snowflakes can be icy and sharp, and there is no way for the tree to be sure that the buds will ever bloom. But the cherry tree knows this: it is hope in autumn that brings flowers in spring. So did you follow the cat through the story? Maybe you can enter into the chat what you think the cat's name is, and we'll find out in a little bit. So yeah, that's my story about hope. And it just goes to show that sometimes, and I think now more than ever, when we're in the midst of a global pandemic, life is confusing. It's unpredictable and it's scary, just like the little girl and the cat in the story experienced things that were confusing and unpredictable and scary. The shadows were unpredictable. The howling wind like wolves was scary. And the snowflakes were confusing. So what the child realized was that the cherry tree has hope. It continues in spite of all those things. It puts those little tiny buds on the branches in autumn and waits for the blossoming in spring. So to me, that was a little metaphor for hope. So I hope you liked the story.
That was great. Thank you for reading that with us. We don't have any questions yet, so I will ask one. And how long did it take you to put this book together, kind of from start to finish?
That's a great question. But you know what I'm going to do, because I know there's a little bit of a delay. I'm going to put up my little question about hope, and then I'm going to come back and answer your questions so that people can maybe add some of their hope words into our word cloud. So what we've decided to do today is we're going to make up a word cloud with words that you have about what brings you hope. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and that's going to give you the QR code that you can use with your phone, or it has a code that you can enter in. And I think some of you received a link already. And then I'll come back and answer the question, and then we'll check to see what words you answered or what words you entered in about hope, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to bring that up so that you guys can all grab the QR code that's right at the top here, or you can go to slido.com and enter in 36352. And if you want to put some words in there, where do you find hope? What is it that you find, where you find hope? What brings you hope? And then we'll come back and we're going to watch that cloud take shape as you enter all of those words in. So we'll just take a pause there. You've got a minute to collect that, and then I'll come back here and answer your question. So yes, sometimes it can take a while for an author's idea to become a book, and not everything that that I write or any writer writes becomes a book. So sometimes I can write an idea down very, very quickly, and it can, you know, maybe take a half an hour to draft out a poem or draft out an idea for a picture book. But then I work on it. I work on it for weeks, sometimes months. And there's some that I've worked on and I've put away and brought back out a year or more later, just to come at it with a fresh perspective, to look at it, to make it as perfect as I can make it. And once I feel that it's what I want it to be, then I send it out to a publisher to see if they're interested in making it into a book. And then if the publisher is interested, then they find the illustrator. I actually don't find the illustrator, and I don't work with the illustrator. That's something that the publisher does, and the illustrator brings their own interpretation to the story. And one thing, if you were really, really careful and you were watching carefully, you'll notice that I didn't mention a cat anywhere in my words in the story. So the cat has appeared in the story completely because of Nathalie Dion. She created that character to go along with the story. So she actually named the cat, and we'll have to see if you can figure out what the cat's name is. So once it goes to the publisher, it can take a couple more years for the, like a year or maybe more, for the illustrator to do the paintings, and then for the artwork to come together with the text, and the book to then get printed and then get to the bookstores and libraries. So it can take a couple of years, the whole process, to get that done.
Very good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Do we want to take a look at what's happening with our word cloud?
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to show these. Oh, we've got some beautiful words on here. So family, books, rainbow, the spring, sunset, sunrise. Those are beautiful. Those are all great images for hope. So we can, oh look, someone says cuddly blankets. That's a great one. That's lovely. So we can answer more questions, and we can come back and take a look at this again in a few minutes if you want to do that. Oh, a rainbow. I find rainbows very helpful because often they come after the rain, so after the darkness, and it's the sun that's shining through all those raindrops that makes the colors of the rainbow. And I find that to be very, very helpful too. So that's great. So maybe we'll go and answer a few more questions, and then we can come back and see what other words have been added to our word cloud.
Perfect. So how long have you been writing? Like, when did you write your first book?
I think I was probably 6 years old when I wrote my first book. So I've enjoyed writing for a very long time. I always like to play with words and make up little stories. My first book was published, though, just about 21 years ago, and that was No Dragons for Tea. So that was the first book that I had published, and I wrote many stories before that didn't get published. So it can be a long process. And then I've written for different kinds of things as well. So there's writers who write and publish books, and there's also writers who do different kinds of writing. I wrote for magazines for a while. So articles in magazines, or I wrote for businesses who needed something like web content. So I did that kind of writing. Yeah, so different types of writing over the years, and I enjoy a lot of different types of writing, and writing for adults and for writing for children as well.
And I'm just checking. I've got Facebook open on one and YouTube on the other here, just to double check. So what would you say if we have anybody watching us today who likes writing? How could they keep at it? What could they do to get better at it? And to any advice that you would give them? Oh,
for sure. So the first thing that I would say, and the most important thing to being a good writer, is that you have to be a reader. If you don't have the time or energy to read books, then it's going to be very difficult to write books. And actually, every book that you read is like a lesson from that author, teaching you more about words and language and characters. So read a lot of different kinds of books. Read graphic novels, read poetry, read mysteries, read romances, read all different kinds of books, because that will help you to become a better writer. And then one other thing that I recommend doing is keeping a notebook. I have
Mm.
notebooks all over the place, and different notebooks for different reasons. This is a research book for a project that I'm working on right now. So anytime I have an idea that I think would work well with that story, I grab this notebook and I write it down. But I also have other notebooks. I don't have them really close, but I have some of these close. I like to keep notebooks in my purse or in my backpack or beside my bed. So if I have a good idea or some words that I really, really like the sound of, because sometimes I like to have little collections of words that sound really fun, I'll write them down. And then when I go for a walk, I sometimes take just little index cards and a pencil with me so that if I see something, I've got that in my pocket and I can pull it out and I can write it down. So one of the things about being a writer is about being aware, aware with all your senses. So you're looking and you're listening and you're feeling things and you're writing those down. So I often do a little observation activity at the end of the day, and I write down 7 things that I saw, 7 things that I did, and 3 things that I heard, and then I draw a picture. And that way you find after doing that for a week, you're really starting to look for things, that you're going for a walk and you notice that there's a little flower growing in the crack in the sidewalk, or you'll notice that a cloud is in the shape of a heart, or you hear the sound of a bird that you haven't heard before. And the more you pay attention to that, the more you notice it. And you can use that in your own writing. So keep a notebook and read lots.
Those are some great tips. And because you mentioned reading and how much that inspired you, do you have a favorite book that you kind of hold on to that you just love to read or maybe go back to?
Some of the books that I've really loved, I read the Mary Stuart Arthurian Legends, the Crystal Cave, the Hollow Hills when I was about 15, and I love those books. And I go back and revisit them because they're beautifully written, they're historical fiction, there's kind of some magic involved, which is really fun. So I like to go back and read those again. In terms of kids' books, I was really inspired by Owl Moon by Jane Yolen. One of the books that I've read recently that I love a lot is Jacqueline Woodson's book, Brown Girl Dreaming, which is beautifully written. I'm trying to think of other books. Oh, I loved Island of the Blue Dolphins when I was growing up, Scott Odell. Lots of books. I loved a lot of Nancy Drew too. I loved mystery. I read a lot of Nancy Drew when I was a little girl.
Yeah. I have some Nancy Drew on my shelf too. So that's a great one.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you want to go back and have a look at our cloud to see if anybody's added anything?
Yeah, let's go and see what's on our cloud. Oh, we have a few more on our cloud. Oh, going for walks, grandchildren. Oh, look at that. Spring is coming up a little bit bigger now too. Somebody's got their dog on there. That's lovely. Very nice. Smiles. Sunrises and sunsets and flowers. Maybe what I'll do is I can leave this open a little bit longer, and people can continue adding to it throughout the day. And then I can send it to you and you can put it up on your Facebook or put it on your Instagram and just share some of the words or some of the places that the people in Manitouwadge find hope.
That sounds great. Yeah, we would love to be able to keep sharing that with our community. And just do a quick check of all of our stuff.
Yeah.
So we don't have any other questions yet, but I think, did you want to do another reading and then we can touch base with any last questions afterwards?
Yes. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So this is a story that I wrote this year. This is very new. and it doesn't have any illustrations with it. So this is where everyone is going to have to use their imagination, and we'll see how you can, when I talked about writing and gathering and being observant and going out for walks and listening and seeing and feeling things, that's what I tried to do in this story, is to use all of my senses to create a setting and to create a feeling and to create place. So we'll see how you can paint those images in your head when I read the story to you. So this is called Skating Wild on an Inland Sea. Did you hear that? Lake Superior calls to us. Come with me. I will take you to the shores of Gitchigami, to the sea in the heart of a continent. Listen, the sound of howling wind, or is it a wolf, runs up and down our spines, making us shiver even before we leave the warmth of our beds, the crackling fire, even before we step out into the purple light of morning. We stand and look across the lake, cheeks flushed, skin prickled with cold. Our breath lingers, small puffs of air that drift into morning. We can see Lake Superior breathing too. Far from shore, the wind and waves have worked against winter's confining ice, and the water is open, cold, yet warmer than the air. Sea smoke rises, hovers above the surface, churning, a fortress of fog that drifts between islands, cloaking the headlands. Turquoise shards of shattered ice tumble together, tinkling, as the lake lifts them to craft a jagged line that trims the shore. Beneath our boots, snow crunches and creaks as we walk around the point carrying our skates. Here, the lake sleeps, away from the wind and waves, where winter has cast a spell, filled the bay with ice, thick and strong, smooth like glass. Tiny white bubbles, trapped while rising, remain suspended in midnight blue. We stand beneath the ancient cliffs of the Canadian Shield, watch dawn climb the sky, make silhouettes of pine and leafless birch, spread warm orange light, gold, silver streams along the horizon. Look, in the snow beneath our feet, we can trace the journey of fox and white-tailed deer. Follow the trail of snowshoe hare and mink until their paths disappear into the boreal forest. And there, prints deep and round, as large as my hand, the wolf. I see your eyes grow wide, assure you she is long gone, nose pressed to the tracks of a long-legged moose. Only her story remains, scripted on a canvas of white. We lace our skates, fingers numb, hear the ravens croak, the chickadee-dee-dees greeting us from the branches of alder and ash, while a blue jay scolds, "Thief, thief," and we tell him we've only come to steal, cold breath, the wind, a memory. We step onto the surface of Superior, our skates scoring patterns, hissing and swishing as we stroke and glide. And then Lake Superior speaks. She tells us the story of her birth, a story of fire and ice, how the earth split wide, spilled molten rock, how great glacial sheets sculpted her bed and conspired with time to wear down mountains and tumble rocks along her shore. Her voice echoes beneath our feet as she stretches, creaking, groaning, thick plates of ice settling. She hums her whale song of water bound by winter, a concert of cello strings tapped by stones, quivering from her depths, resonating up and into us. We join the song, skating on the wild ice of a vast inland sea. So that was inspired this year with the cold temperatures that we had and not a lot of snow. I was actually able to go skating on the wild ice of Lake Superior. So I hope you enjoyed that little journey there. And yeah. So did we want to check our
yeah,
sure.
our
Let's,
cloud? Yeah, that
let's
sounds
check
great.
our cloud and let's see what we've got going on there. Oh, beautiful. That's looking really lovely. My mom, yeah. My dog, my sister going for walks. And you can always add the same word. If the thing that brings you hope is already up there, it's always, you can still add the same word if that's what brings you hope. So as I mentioned, I'll keep that open for today, and people can keep adding the words for what brings them hope, and then I'll send it to you so that you can have that.
That sounds wonderful. And we want to thank you again. I just double checked and there were no other comments or anything that had come up, but I think we might have a couple of classes visiting us too. So that might be a little tricky for them to get their comments in there. But we very much appreciate you spending some time this afternoon with us. And just wondering if you have any final thoughts that you want to share about sort of what it's like to go through that publishing process, or your favorite place to write, any other little tidbit that you want to let us in on before we say goodbye today.
For sure. Yeah, my favorite place to write, I really like writing where I can see Lake Superior. So my dad actually lives on Lake Superior, and I often go out to his place and I open the windows so I can hear the water and hear the chickadees and the blue jays. And I like that for writing. But I just wanted to add that as a writer, you know, a book is only, you know, marks and paper, and it's just images and that, and it doesn't actually come alive until it's being read. So it's when a reader picks it up and opens it and reads the words and looks at the story in the images that a book really comes alive. So as a writer, I'm so grateful for readers, and for readers who are reading Canadian and reading stories about where I live and the books that I've written. So I'm so grateful for I Read Canadian Day, and for the readers who have been giving life to my words every time they open up a book and share that with me. So as a writer, I don't often get to experience that my story is having, it's connecting with readers without me. And I think that's so special. And I'm so grateful that I've had this opportunity to have my books, my writing made into books so that people can read them and they can share that experience and connect with my stories. So thank you so much to readers. I appreciate you.
And thank you so much for being with us. We definitely love reading your books around here. I know some of the teachers have taken them out in the past to read with their students. And so thank you for putting all of those lovely thoughts on paper so that we can enjoy them with you. And once again, thank you so much for coming and being with us virtually. And we really appreciate it and appreciate hearing your story and hearing you read the stories so that we can hear them really how you see them, which is always very special to do. So thank you so much, Jean, and thank you so much to everybody who took some time this afternoon to join us. And we will definitely be sharing that cloud so that you can see it after all of those words have come in. So continue to add to them as you think of some other things that bring you hope.
You're welcome, and thank you again so much. And what I can do is I can put that cloud up again for a few minutes once we've ended. And then, you know, if anybody still needs to jot down the coordinates of how to get there, they can do that. So yes, thank you so much, Manitouaj. It was great visiting with you today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Happy I Read Canadian Day.